Welcome back. The U.S., of course, is rallying support from a broad coalition of nations for its four-point plan to destroy ISIS in Iraq and Syria. Canada has deployed dozens of military observers to Iraq, but the exact number and the specific nature of their work is not clear, and that has the opposition parties demanding a parliamentary debate on Canada's role. Is it necessary to disclose details of the operation publicly, and what would a debate actually accomplish? And in the meantime, the U.S. and the European Union have slapped new sanctions on Russia. And should Canada follow that lead, even if it could jeopardize the ceasefire? Joining me now to debate all of this, James Bezan is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Defence, and he joins me by phone from Beausejour, Manitoba. And in Toronto, Peggy Nash is the NDP's industry critic. We were hoping to get Liberal MP John McCallum, but he's stuck in traffic. It must be Friday. James Bezan, could I start with you and the Ukraine topic, which you know well? The Prime Minister, of course, announced last night that the Ukrainian President, Petro Poroshenko, will visit Ottawa next week and address Parliament. So where's Canada in all this? We heard tough new sanctions from the European Union. They say, well, never mind the ceasefire, we're going to get tough. And the U.S. is going after Russia's biggest bank now. Where are we? Why aren't we doing the same?
Well, actually, the United States and the European Union have lagged behind us in the number of people and entities that have been sanctioned by our Canadian government. We will continue to assess and come forward with sanctions as necessary. We want to make sure that we're taking every step possible to halt Putin and his aggression in Ukraine. So we're going to continue to work with our coalition partners, our allies in NATO, and everybody within the European Union to try to find a resolution to this ongoing crisis and stop this invasion. So right now we're kind of sitting on this tenuous peace agreement that's at play. There has been some provocative actions taking place from the Russian side, but we are hoping that with the U.S. and the European Union bringing forward some new sanctions, catching up to some of the Canadian sanctions, that will help convince Putin that he's on the wrong track.
Peggy Nash, your party would like to see a debate about all of this. What would be the debate?
Well, first of all, let me say we're pleased that President Poroshenko is going to be visiting Canada, and pleased that we have announced aid to Ukraine. But frankly, it's been slow getting out the door. And with respect to sanctions, we've talked about sanctions. We've imposed some sanctions, but there are major tycoons very close to Mr. Putin who have significant interests in Canada that have been sanctioned by our allies that we have not sanctioned yet here from Canada. So there's certainly more we could do in terms of toughening up our sanctions. With respect to ISIS and the whole issue of what kind of reaction Canada has, certainly there's a terrible humanitarian crisis going on, and we have no hesitation in supporting humanitarian aid. But if we're going to have a military response, there needs to be more clarity in terms of how many troops are we talking about, what are they going to be doing, what kind of mission are we talking about, because we don't want to start something that starts small and there's mission creep and suddenly we're into a major commitment. So I think, to be fair to Canadians, the government needs to tell us what their plans are.
I want to return to that, but and I invited you to hop forward to that topic. My mistake. I should have asked first if James Bezan buys your argument that we are lagging behind on sanctions. Peggy Nash makes a good point, James Bezan, that there are indeed prominent figures in Putin's inner circle who just happen to have interests in Canada and the oil sands, who don't seem to have been hit as hard as the Europeans and the Americans. Is there a connection?
Well, we have been acting in ensuring that we're sending a strong message to President Putin, to the Russian Federation, but we're also concerned about our own national interests here in Canada. But we are still way ahead in the number of people and entities that have been sanctioned. The U.S. and the European Union are only really playing catch-up now, and we are prepared to go farther. And we'll continue to dialogue with our allies and trying to find a way forward to bring a diplomatic solution to this ongoing crisis. I just want to, Terry, go back to this President Poroshenko coming to Canada. I think this is a great opportunity for President Poroshenko to be here to address Parliament and really all Canadians on telling his side of the story of what's been happening in Ukraine, how their sovereignty and territorial integrity has been undermined so aggressively by the Russian regime. And it was great to be in Toronto last night at the United for Ukraine Gala, where Prime Minister Harper spoke. And also, in addition to announcing that President Poroshenko was coming, also announced that Canada will continue to support Ukraine in its democracy, and will be sending short-term and long-term observers for the parliamentary election scheduled for October 26th.
All right. Now, allow me to return to Peggy Nash's second point, that is about a potential debate about our attitude to the struggle against ISIS in Iraq. Ms. Nash has already said that she's got some questions about what this mission means, how open-ended it is, how long, how many troops. So where are those details? James Bezan, why don't we know those details? Are they just unknowable?
No, at this time we're still waiting for the final reports to come back from the 4 military planners and assessors that are on the ground in northern Iraq, working with local military and security forces to determine what role Canada will play. What we are saying, that we are proud to be part of a coalition that is tackling the real prevalent danger of ISIS, not just here in Iraq, but around the world. And of course, the huge concern that I think all of us are still so overwhelmed by is the barbaric, murderous, and terrorist attacks that have been carried out by ISIL on innocent civilians, on ethnic and religious minorities, and the way they've conducted so many war crimes, it's almost unspeakable, and it's hard to keep track of all the wrongs that they've committed.
Well, given that, Peggy Nash, probably you would agree with the government side that this is a barbaric organization. So if not doing by doing what the government is already doing, what would you do that's any different? For example, would you support funding for the Syrian opposition forces?
Well, we've been
this is for Peggy Nash. I intended that question.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, what we've said is the immediate need is humanitarian. This is a very, very dangerous part of the world. There are huge numbers of people that have been dislocated here who are in extreme distress, and the immediate reaction needs to be humanitarian. So from that perspective, that effort we fully support.
Is that a no on aid to the Syrian rebels?
Well, what we have said is that any further action, we want to have more information and more rationale to take any further action. I mean, for example, let me say that Senator McCain has made allegations about a porous border in Canada and terrorists coming across to the U.S. from Canada. Now, we have a very close security relationship with the U.S. This was an allegation made after 9/11, which turned out not to be true. And I would think that we would need to know, for example, do we have a problem here in Canada that we have so far been completely unaware of? I just think there's lots of unanswered questions, and I think that the government owes it to the Canadian people and certainly to any military forces to make sure that we have as much preparation, information, to inform any decision that the government's going to make about any military action.
All right, briefly, if you would, James Bezan, same topic, funding for the Syrian opposition forces. President Obama, for example, has asked Congress for $500 million to support the training of Syrian opposition fighters and take on ISIS. Will Canada join that effort and send support to Syrian rebels?
We haven't been asked to take that role. The role that we've been asked to take is the work that we're doing in northern Iraq with local military forces there.
Stay out of Syria, is that it?
No, right at this point in time, we're quite proud of, first of all, that we are providing the lethal military equipment into northern Iraq. We're quite proud of the fact that we're providing over $28 million in humanitarian aid to the people of Iraq that have been displaced and terrorized by ISIL. And we will, from a Canadian standpoint, do what's in the best interest of Canada. And we'll work with our coalition partners, but we're going to be extremely transparent in all of this, as we already have by having Minister Baird and Mr. Nicholson appear before the Foreign Affairs Committee to discuss what the goals and objectives of our mission is in Iraq. And that's a 30-day review, and this is going to continue on with more debate and questions in the House of Commons, and we'll continue to work with our opposition partners here in Canada and in Parliament to ensure that it's as transparent as possible.
All right, James Bezan by phone from Beausejour, Manitoba. Thanks very much. And Peggy Nash in Toronto. Thanks for joining us, both.